The girl with green eyes, James, lived on the edge of a quiet farming village. Far from the noise of cities, far from the trouble of the past wars, he liked his peace, his tomatoes, and his dog, Rex. But something had been disturbing his peace lately. Every morning, James found fresh vegetables missing from his garden. Carrots were gone, cucumbers vanished, and even ripe tomatoes were picked clean from the vines. No footprints, no signs of break-in, just silence and missing food. At first, James thought it was raccoons or kids playing pranks. He placed traps, but nothing was caught. Then he installed an old motion camera near the garden, the kind he once used during his army scouting missions. That night, he sat quietly on his porch, shotgun by his side. Rex curled at his feet. The air was cold, the moon half covered by clouds. And silence covered the land like a blanket. Then the sensor light blinked red. James grabbed the small monitor and watched. There was movement in the dark, near the carrots, a figure bent low. Small and quick. Not a raccoon, not a kid either. The shape shimmered under the moonlight, like it wore something thin and glowing. He narrowed his eyes, heart steady but alert. This was no ordinary thief. He whispered to Rex to stay. Then quietly stepped down with the shotgun ready. His boots crunched the dry grass, and the figure froze. James turned on his flashlight, and its beam hit the intruder. It was a girl, but not human. She was short, her skin a pale silver blue, and her eyes bright. Glowing green looked right at him. Full of fear, her arms were thin, shaking, holding a small cloth bag full of stolen vegetables. She wore a long torn cloth that wrapped around her like a dress. But it was stained and old. James was so surprised he didn't even raise the gun. She turned to run, but her foot caught a rock and she fell, crying out softly. "Stop, James," said, his voice calm but strong. She crawled back, still clutching the bag, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "Please, no shoot," she whispered in broken English. "Me hungry, no food." James slowly lowered the shotgun, confused and unsure what to say. This wasn't an alien warrior, not a threat, not a spy. She looked like a child, tired, scared, and starving. Rex ran forward and sniffed her. Tail wagging, the girl didn't flinch. She smiled weakly at the dog and whispered something in a language James didn't understand. Rex licked her hand gently, and James sighed. "Get up," he said. Reaching a hand toward her, she looked at him, unsure, then slowly stood, shaking. Her knees were scraped, and her dress barely covered her feet. James led her into his cabin, unsure if he was making the right decision, but knowing he couldn't leave her out there. Inside, he poured her a bowl of soup, still warm from earlier. She stared at the steam like it was magic. She sipped, then drank fast, finishing it in seconds. James refilled it, and she ate again. Slower this time. He didn't speak, just watched her. She was thin, bones showing under her skin, her hair tangled like dry grass. After the third bowl, she sat back, breathing heavily, and looked at him. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice clearer now. "What's your name?" James asked. "Reluna," she answered, touching her chest. "Where are you from?" he continued. She pointed up at the sky, then at herself, and said, "Ship fall, people gone, I hide." James sat in silence, trying to understand a crashed alien ship, lost crew. And now this girl hiding and stealing vegetables to survive? She looked around the cabin, then back at him. "You good man," she whispered. "Most chase me." James didn't smile, but he nodded slowly. "You hungry? Not dangerous?" he said. "But you can't stay outside. It's cold." Reluna lowered her head and said, "They looked for me, men in black, bad people." That made James pause. His mind flashed to the war, the secret labs, the men who called alien specimens if she escaped from something like that. She was in more danger than he thought. He looked at her again not as a thief but as someone running from something. "Worse, you stay here tonight," he said. "We'll figure out tomorrow." Raluna's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't fear. They were relief. She curled up near the fireplace with a blanket, Rex beside her. James sat by the window with his shotgun in hand, eyes watching the road outside. The wind howled across the empty land, and in that quiet cabin, something strange and human had begun. The midnight guest the next morning. James woke up in his chair, shotgun across his lap. The fireplace was still glowing, and Raluna was fast asleep on the rug with Rex curled beside her like a guardian. For a moment, James forgot she wasn't human. She looked peaceful, breathing softly, her thin fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. But as the wind rattled the windows, reality returned. This girl was a fugitive, and someone or something was probably already looking for her. James brewed a pot of coffee, the scent waking Raluna. She sat up, eyes wide, then relaxed when she saw James and Rex. He handed her a cup of warm milk, and she held it like it was treasure. "You sleep okay?" he asked. She nodded, then pointed at Rex. "Warm," she said with a small smile. James gave a small chuckle. "He does that?" After breakfast, Raluna stood by the window, watching the trees sway in the cold wind. Then she said something strange. "They come in black sky. They look." James walked over, his heart already uneasy. "Who?" he asked. "Men in dark suits. Big guns. Scan forest," she said, trembling. "I run, hide and hole, but I hear voices. Find her. Target escaped. Dangerous asset," she whispered, her voice cracking. James clenched his jaw. Memories of his military days rushing back. He'd heard language like that before, cold, sterile, used for people who were seen as things. "I'm not a set," she whispered again, like she was convincing herself. James knelt down and looked her in the eyes. "You're not," he said. "You're someone, not a thing." She blinked quickly, tears rising, but she smiled through them. That afternoon, James showed her how to use a rake, how to clean garden rows. She struggled with Earth's gravity, moving slowly, sometimes falling, but never giving up. She asked questions about everything: the soil, the plants, even why worms wriggled. James answered all of them with patience, watching her curiosity grow like one of his crops. Later, James went to the village to buy supplies. He told Raluna to stay inside, not to answer the door, and to hide if anything strange happened. He drove to town, mind spinning. He bought extra food, a first aid kit, and some thick clothes that might fit her small frame. At the hardware store, he saw something that made him freeze. A black military SUV parked near the post office. Two men in dark uniforms stood near it, scanning the streets. One held a scanner in his hand that pulsed with green light. James quickly left, his heart pounding, back home. He found Raluna crouched behind the couch, shaking. "What happened?" he asked quickly. She pointed toward the woods, small flying eye. Came, buzzed near window. A drone, he thought. Most likely searching heat signatures. He pulled down the curtains and moved her to the basement. "We'll stay down here tonight," he said. Raluna didn't complain, just nodded, holding Rex's fur like a lifeline in the basement. She stared at the walls, then drew something on the dirt floor. It looked like a symbol, a star, broken by a jagged line beside it. A small triangle. James leaned closer. "What is that?" he asked. "Place. Far," she said. "Maybe others there. Maybe safe." James recognized the symbol. It matched something from his old recon missions. An abandoned bunker site listed as inactive. Now he wasn't so sure. That night, as they lay in the dim basement, James kept one hand on his shotgun and the other near the emergency radio. Raluna whispered softly, "Why you help me?" James stared at the ceiling. thinking of all the lives he saw destroyed in the war. "I've seen too many people hurt for no reason," he replied. "You didn't do anything wrong." She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "You." Different than others, James didn't answer, but in his heart, something shifted. He wasn't just protecting her anymore, he cared. Outside, the wind picked up, and in the distance, a low humming sound passed over the trees, another drone. But inside that old cabin, below the floorboards, a girl from the stars and a soldier from Earth. The secret grows. 3 days passed, and the snow around James' cabin began to melt. Spring was coming, but the ground was still soft and cold. James watched Reluna crouch in the garden with Rex by her side, carefully planting new seeds in a straight line. Her silver-blue skin shimmered under the morning sun, and her glowing green eyes focused as she gently pressed soil over each seed. She hummed softly, a tune James didn't recognize, but it made the air feel lighter every day. She learned something new: how to rake, how to water, how to feed the chickens without getting pecked. She even named the rooster commander Feathers, and saluted it every morning. James didn't laugh, but his smile returned for the first time in years. Still, the danger hadn't passed. Each night, James scanned the skies for drones, listening to the low hum that signaled they were near, and every time it came close, he led Reluna to the basement, where she hid behind shelves of old tools and canned peaches. One evening, James noticed something strange. Reluna had drawn again. On the floor, this time a larger pattern: circles, symbols, and arrows that looked like directions. "Reluna, what is this?" he asked, crouching beside her. She tapped the dirt gently. "This star map," she whispered. "This place used to be base, old place, long ago." James looked closer, and the symbols matched an abandoned facility. He remembered from his army days something buried deep in the mountain range beyond the forest. It was once listed as Galactic Survey Post 12, but after the war, everyone assumed it was shut down. "Others like me may be there," Reluna said softly. "Or maybe signal something to help." James didn't know if it was real or a memory, but something told him she wasn't wrong. He made up his mind to check it out, but first, he needed help. That night, James called an old friend from the war, Sasha Lee, a medic turned underground fixer. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice sharp as ever. "James Carver," she said, "I thought you were growing cabbage, not playing with fire." "I need information," he said. "About Post 12, and maybe alien tech." There was a long pause. Then Sasha replied, "Whatever you're into, it's hot. And I mean red alert hot." James didn't deny it. "Can you help?" she sighed. "I'll send what I can. But be careful, there's chatter in secure lines. Someone's hunting an escaped bioform. Probably the one you're hiding." James thanked her, heart heavy. He returned to find Reluna asleep near the fireplace, Rex guarding her like a statue. James sat beside them, staring into the flames. The next morning, the data arrived: an old map of Post 12 security codes, and one more thing: a file marked Experiment 7 Alpha. Viable subject escaped. The photo was fuzzy, but James knew the eyes green. Glowing, terrified, he clenched his fists and turned off the screen. Later, while Reluna planted beans, she collapsed suddenly, gasping for breath. James rushed to her side, lifting her gently. Her skin was pale, veins darkened, and her pulse weak. "She's reacting to Earth's gravity again," he muttered. "Or something worse." He laid her on the couch and gave her water. Placing a cold cloth on her forehead, she opened her eyes slowly. "Hurt inside," she whispered. "Like bones, too heavy." James remembered something Sasha once told him: aliens from Reluna's world needed a mineral supplement to stay stable. On Earth, without it, their bodies began to weaken. And where could he find it now? Reluna moaned softly, And James couldn't wait. He went into town again. This time, heading to a back-alley trader named Hicks, who sold everything from black market medicine to drone parts. "I need Zentrium D powder," James said, low voice. Hicks raised an eyebrow. "Illegal stuff," he whispered. "Who you trying to save? A ghost?" James pulled a small wad of credits from his pocket. "Just give me the vial. An hour." Later, he returned to the cabin and mixed the powder into warm soup. Raluna drank it slowly, and her color began to return. By nightfall, she was standing again, weak but alive. James tucked her in with care. Heart pounding from more than just fear. He was growing attached, and that scared him more than the suits and drones. He looked out the window. The stars above glittering like cold diamonds. Tomorrow, they would head toward the mountain. Toward the truth hidden in the earth, but tonight, in that small wooden house. A secret grew quietly between them. It wasn't just about protection anymore. It was about something much deeper. Hope, the visitor from the sky, began with a flash in the night sky. A streak of blue fire cut across the clouds. So fast and low, it shook the ground beneath James' cabin. Rex growled from the porch, fur raised, and Raluna pressed her hands to her chest, her eyes wide with alarm. "That's not a falling star," James muttered, already grabbing his coat. And rifle, Raluna stood slowly, swaying, still weak but determined. She looked at him and said just one word. "Brother." James didn't ask how she knew. He threw supplies into a backpack and helped Raluna into the truck. The crash had landed in the dense forest northwest of the property, near where the old hills met the wildlands. They drove fast, headlights off. Tires cutting through dirt and cold air. The trees grew tighter, branches clawing the windows. And the engine roared louder than James liked. After half an hour, they found the crash site. A small shuttle, sleek and alien, was half buried in a crater of steaming mud. Metal groaned, sparks danced from its hull, and the smell of burning fuel filled the air. Raluna cried out and jumped from the truck, ignoring James' warnings. She rushed to the shattered door, where a hand slender and pale like hers reached out weakly. James ran to her side, lifting the broken panel just enough for them to pull the figure out. It was a male alien, older, his clothes torn, blood dripping from his mouth. He gasped, locking eyes with Raluna, and whispered something in their native tongue. She answered quickly, her voice breaking. Then he turned to James and spoke in broken English. "You protected her." James nodded once, and the alien smiled faintly. "She is. Last of unit. Pure." "Important," he whispered. Then he pressed a small device into James' hand, a cube of glass and light base. "Mountain, send signal." He croaked, "But they come. Men in black. Earth not safe." With that, his breath slowed. And he died in Raluna's arms. She wailed softly, a sound like wind through hollow trees, and James looked away. He had seen too much death in his life, but this felt heavier, like something ancient had ended. And something dangerous had just begun. They buried the body under rocks and leaves. Raluna drew a symbol in the dirt above the grave, 2 stars crossing over a circle. James didn't ask what it meant. He held the glass device in his hand, watching it glow softly with pulsing lines when he touched it. A map appeared in the air, post 12, deep in the mountain, with one red point blinking steadily. As they drove back, James kept checking the sky, and then he saw its drones, small and silent, floating just above the tree line, scanning. "Damn," he whispered. "They're tracking the crash back at the cabin." He packed faster than ever. Raluna moved weakly but helped where she could, grabbing food, tools, and blankets. They were almost ready to leave when headlights suddenly appeared. At the edge of the field, 3 black vehicles, armored and humming low, came rolling toward the house. James shoved Raluna into the cellar, pressed a rifle into her hand, and said, "If they find you, run to the mountains. Don't stop." Then he locked the hatch and stepped outside. Shotgun in hand, the agents stepped out, tall and cold. Wearing black suits with no insignia, "Mr. Carver," one said, his voice flat. "We need to search your property." "Do you have a warrant?" James asked calmly. "No," the man replied. "We have orders." James didn't move. "I'm just a farmer," he said. "I don't know what you're looking for." One of them raised a small scanner, beeped toward the cellar. "Heat signature, below," the agent said. James raised his shotgun slightly. Not aiming, but warning. "You're not going down there," he said. There was a long silence. Then the lead agent smiled coldly. "Very well, we'll return. And next time, it'll be with more than questions." They turned, climbed back into their trucks, and drove off slowly, tires spitting dirt. James waited until the engines were gone. Then opened the cellar. Raluna was crouched behind crates. Rifle ready, eyes glowing in the dark. "They know," she said. Voice shaking. "Yes," James replied, "but we're not staying." He held up the glass cube. Now blinking faster, "We're going to the mountain," he said. Tonight, outside, the stars watched silently and far away. Something terrible had just been set in motion. The garden burns. The wind was louder than usual that night. Clouds rolled in from the east, heavy and low. James tightened the straps on his backpack and threw one last glance at the cabin. Inside, everything they could carry was already packed food. Water, rope, and the blinking cube that pulsed like a heartbeat. Raluna stood by the door, wearing a dark cloak James had sewn from old jackets. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed her fear. "We leave now," James said. Raluna nodded, clutching the map she had drawn from memory, but just as James stepped onto the porch, he froze. The sky behind the trees lit up orange flames. He turned, his stomach dropping. Smoke rose fast, and fire danced along the fence line. The garden was on fire. Tomatoes crackled in the heat. Green leaves curled into black ash, and the wooden posts snapped one by one. Rex barked furiously, circling the field as if trying to defend it. James ran forward, trying to douse the flames with a bucket. But it was useless. Gasoline, he realized. Someone had soaked the soil. This wasn't an accident. Raluna watched in horror as the garden she had helped plant was swallowed by fire. Tears welled in her eyes, and she whispered, "Why burn food?" James clenched his fists, jaw tight. "They want to send a message." He said, "They know you were here, and now they want us to run." He pulled Raluna back toward the truck, grabbed Rex, and drove through the back trail leading toward the mountains. Ash floated down from the sky like black snow. In the rearview mirror, James saw the cabin's windows glowing. Then bursting, he didn't look again for hours. They drove in silence through old roads and narrow paths. The forest grew thicker, the trees taller, and soon the air was cold again. Eventually, James stopped the truck by a cliff where the road ended. "We walk from here," he said. Raluna nodded, wrapping the cloak tighter around her shoulders. She looked back once, but the fire was gone. Replaced by distant smoke, they began to climb up hills, across streams, through fallen branches and slippery rocks. James led with a flashlight, careful not to make noise. Rex stayed close to Raluna, sensing her weakness, her need for safety. The glass cube in James' pack beeped louder now, guiding them like a compass. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Near midnight, they reached a ridge, and beyond it, hidden by trees and stone, was a dark cave. But the entrance wasn't natural lit, was carved, wide and smooth, and old markings lined the walls. Raluna stepped forward and pressed her hand to the symbols. They glowed faintly under her touch. Like they recognized her, a door opened with a hiss of ancient air. Inside was cold metal, long halls, and flickering lights. Post 12, James thought. Buried and forgotten, but not dead. They moved carefully through the corridor, weapons ready. Signs of life were few to see floors, cracked screens, and empty rooms, until they reached a central chamber, a dome-shaped room with a glowing terminal at the center. Reluna touched the device, and it lit up, flooding the chamber with soft green light. Holograms appeared, maps of the Earth, stars, and alien coordinates. The system spoke in her language first, then slowly shifted to English. Geneva Protocol breached. Terran government violation detected. Message stored. James listened as the machine played a recording. Aliens speaking of peace, of alliances, and how Earth betrayed it. How the lab Reluna escaped from was never supposed to exist. And how she was the last of a diplomatic envoy. Captured and dissected for military advantage, James felt sick. All those years he fought for Earth. He never knew what was buried beneath the soil. Suddenly, alarms echoed through the chamber. Reluna turned, eyes wide. They follow. They close. James grabbed the cube, pulled Reluna behind him, and looked at the screen drones inbound. 10 or more. The mountain wasn't a hiding place. It was now a trap. He grabbed Reluna's hand. We don't stop, he said. We expose this, we show the truth. She nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. Strength burning behind her fear. They ran through the tunnels, deeper into the mountain behind them. The sound of approaching boots and buzzing machines filled the air, and far above, the last flame from the garden finally flickered out. But something new had been lit inside the mountain. A fire they would not extinguish so easily. The hidden lab. The tunnels twisted like the roots of a tree buried deep in Earth's bones. James led the way with the glowing cube in hand, each beep guiding them deeper beneath the mountain. Reluna moved close behind, her feet slipping now and then on damp metal floors. The walls pulsed with old energy. Flickering lights overhead, sparking to life with every few steps. It felt like the place was waking up just for them, or because of them. Suddenly, the cube flashed red. Ahead was a door sealed, old, marked with the same alien symbol Reluna had drawn in the dirt back at the cabin. James touched the panel, and the door slid open with a long hiss. Inside was a lab not broken, not forgotten, but working, humming, breathing. Cold white lights lit long glass tubes, most empty, but a few filled with shadows that moved slowly. Reluna gasped and ran to one of them. Inside floated a girl, another. Alien like her, younger, her eyes closed but still alive. She, my kind, Reluna whispered, tears forming. James scanned the room quickly, heart pounding. Desks lined the walls, covered in reports written in both Earth and alien languages. Screens showed vitals, maps, and one horrifying label. Test. Batch 74. Memory suppression complete. This isn't a bunker, James said slowly. It's a prison. Reluna stood frozen, hand pressed against the glass. The humming of machines echoing around them. Then a voice crackled through hidden speakers. Well done, soldier, it said coldly. You led her home. Lights snapped on overhead, brighter now, revealing figures on a platform above me. In black suits, holding rifles, faces expressionless, the leader stepped forward. His voice calm but sharp. She was supposed to die in the forest, he said. You've interfered with something far greater than you understand, James. Raised his gun. Try me, he growled. The agent didn't flinch, only nodded. And more soldiers began surrounding the room. Don't, Reluna begged, stepping between James and the suits. No more hurt. Step aside. The agent ordered. She's not a person, she's property. James fired. The blast hit the railing near the agent's feet, and chaos erupted. Reluna dove to the floor, and James pulled her behind a lab table as bullets sprayed the walls. Glass shattered, machines sparked, alarms screamed. James tossed a smoke flare, grabbed Raluna's hand, and they ran deeper into the lab through a side corridor. Behind them, gunfire echoed, mixed with commands shouted through gas masks. They moved fast, turning corners until they reached another door, this one locked tight. The cube blinked wildly, and Raluna pressed her hand against a glowing panel. The door opened, revealing a chamber even colder than the last. In the center stood a console, humming with untouched energy. A backup communication relayed old alien. Tech wired directly to deep space beacons. "This can send truth," Raluna said, panting, "to my people." James nodded, handing her the cube. "Then do it." She placed the cube in the slot, and the console began to shine. The alien writing turned to stars, coordinates, and a broadcast began images of the lab, of the tubes, of Earth soldiers experimenting on beings who had come in peace. A signal burst out into the stars, loud and clear. Then came the countdown. Self-destruct protocol active 2 minutes. "They'll bury this whole place," James said, grabbing Ryluna. "Not if we fly," she whispered, eyes wide, pointing to a hangar door flashing open at the far end of the lab. Inside, a single alien skimmer hovered, barely functional, its lights flickering weakly. James didn't hesitate. He lifted Raluna into the cockpit, Rex jumping in after her. He slammed the panel, hit the starter, and the craft roared to life. With a groan, the roof above began to split open, revealing a crack of night sky. Flames burst from behind as the lab began collapsing. With a shout, James pulled the controls, and the skimmer lifted, shaking, rising higher. Below them, fire filled the mountain, swallowing the lab and everything inside. Raluna looked down, her face pale. "My people will know." "I sent message." James nodded, sweat on his brow, hands tight on the controls. The stars opened above them, silent and wide. Behind them, Earth's secrets burned. But above them, hope was rising again. The garden replanted. The sky above Earth was clear that morning. Golden light poured across the hills, and birds chirped like they had forgotten there was ever a war far from any city. Tucked into the edge of an abandoned valley stood a new cabin, fresh wood, clean windows, and a wide-open field waiting to grow again. James stepped out onto the porch, dirt on his hands, sun on his face. Behind him, Rex barked happily, chasing a blue butterfly across the tall grass, and just beyond the garden bed, Raluna knelt in the soil, planting new seeds with care. Her skin still shimmered faintly, but she looked stronger now. Her back was straight, her arms steady, and her green eyes bright as emeralds. She wore a simple shirt James had stitched for her, and a sun hat that was far too big. Still, she smiled every time it fell crooked over her eyes. "Tomatoes go here," she said softly, like before. James nodded and handed her a bucket of water. It had been 2 months since the mountain burned. 2 months since they sent the signal that rocked every hidden corner of Earth's dark military networks. 2 months since Ryluna nearly died. Inside that lab, and in those 2 months, the world had changed in quiet ways. Some governments denied everything, some demanded answers. But others, especially the small ones, the ones who had suffered, sent messages to the stars. They apologized, and those messages were heard one morning, not long ago. A single alien ship arrived not with weapons, but with lights blinking gently in peace. It didn't land in a city or at a military base. It landed near the valley. Near the cabin, 3 beings stepped out tall, graceful, and wearing robes made of shimmering cloth. One of them looked almost like Ryluna, older, stronger, and with the same glowing green eyes. Ryluna had run to them, arms wide, tears flowing. They spoke in their language, full of music and quiet clicks. And James had stepped back, giving them space. When she returned, she said only one thing. "They thank you." He had nodded, unsure what to say. But the look in her eyes told him she wasn't leaving. Not yet, maybe not ever. Now? The field was green again. New plants stretched from the earth like they remembered the touch of her. Hands, even the old tree near the fence, had begun to bloom. As if it too wanted to stay awake, James watched Raluna work, her fingers in the soil, her expression calm. She still hummed when she planted. The same soft tune from that first day in the garden. He walked over, knelt beside her, and placed a small wooden sign in the dirt. Raluna's Row, it read, carved with a shaky hand and old knife. She touched the sign and smiled. Now they grow with name. He looked at her, serious now. You could leave. You know your people came, he said. They'd welcome you back. She looked at the sky, then at him. Maybe one day, she whispered, but not yet. Why? He asked quietly. She reached for his hand. Dirt under her nails, warmth in her touch. Because you gave me roots, she said, not just safety. Rex barked again, this time running toward the path leading down the valley. A small group was approaching 3 more alien children. Walking slowly, holding hands. Led by another familiar face, Sasha Lee, James' old war medic friend, waved from the distance. Her coat flapping in the wind found them lost near the border. She called, figured you might have room. James stood and waved back. Then, looked at Raluna. Looks like the garden's not the only thing growing. He said. She smiled, already moving to greet the newcomers. The children looked tired, but their eyes lit up when Raluna knelt to welcome them. She spoke to them in soft words. Leading them gently toward the cabin, James followed behind, heart full in a way he hadn't felt in years, not with pride, not with duty, but with something deeper belonging. This wasn't just a safe house anymore. It was becoming something else, a home, and in that valley. Where a soldier once lived alone, where fire once burned every sign of life, now bloomed a place where aliens and humans shared more than silence. They shared meals, laughter, and the slow miracle of planting something new.